Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Led by Life. We're your hosts. I'm Rafaela, and this is Hannah. And, we're here today and we're just kind of like getting right into it. For those of you who don't know, we both have manifestor type energy according to human design. If you're familiar with the system of human design, that's how Hannah and I became really wonderful friends. And in meeting, we just decided that we wanted to have some deeper conversations around just the different types of experiences that we can have as humans, as well as exploring more our individuality when it comes to human design and the different things that we experience with our own charts, and kind of getting like really fun and deep into it. So here we are.
Yeah, here we are.
Yeah.
And really just like sharing our process and our journey of learning more and discovering more, because there's so much. I feel like the more you know, the more you realize you don't know when it comes to these sorts of things, because there's just so many layers. There's so much.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. How are you feeling this morning?
This morning I feel good, but I feel tired still. Sleep is still something I'm trying to figure out and find a way that works for me. Yeah, I still haven't figured out my sleep, but I'm good. I did something spontaneous yesterday. I got a spontaneous urge, very manifestor of me. I was just kind of sitting in bed all afternoon, and I was tired yesterday as well, so I wasn't really doing much. I wasn't really feeling like doing much. And then out of nowhere, I was like, I'm going to record some meditations for myself, because I'd had this kind of feeling for a while, like because I teach meditation as part of the work that I do. And whenever I'm guiding meditation, I always feel like I get really deep into it myself. It's like the best way for me to actually practice meditation is through guiding other people through it. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this for myself. And so I just sat down and I got my microphone out and I recorded a meditation, and it was really beautiful just to do the actual recording. And then I had this kind of urge to do some like guided affirmations for myself, because I've been learning a little bit about like subconscious reprogramming lately. And we've talked about this a lot. Like, I've had so many big emotions come up recently over it's really been the last couple of months. But now I'm becoming even more and more aware of it as it's happening. It's like, um, it's really evident to me that it's like old stuff, old conditioning, old programming that wants to kind of come up. And so I've been working on some of those like subconscious beliefs. And anyway, I just had this urge to record some guided affirmations for myself, and I got really into it. And yeah, I listened to it back last night and then again when I woke up this morning, and I really feel like it's kind of given me this, I don't know, it's like made me feel good. That's the only way I can kind of describe it. Yeah. So that's been fun.
It sounds it sounds really fun and so unique, because and what came to me like as you were sharing was, I wonder if that process works so well for you because of your defined head center. Like, to me, when I hear even you just expressing it, it sounds like in your own way you're channeling, and it's very
Yeah.
effective.
That's how it feels. It's like
Yeah.
I'm able to tap into, and because I'm not trying to do it for anyone else in particular, it takes some of that pressure off it having to come across for other people in a particular way. It's like, this is for me. So
Yeah.
yeah. And it's individual, right? I'm just trying to think of my Oh no, I think the channel that I have between my two head centers is collective energy, but the way that my voice expresses itself is individual. So yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, just because like for myself, having guided people through a meditation, it's rare that I'll ever just off a whim like know like what to guide. Really,
Mm,
I usually am following like an already scripted meditation. And even for
mm,
myself, like my own process of, like I've shared with you before, like my own process of meditating is typically listening to somebody else's guided meditation, or like today I did like a sound bath meditation. And or it'll be like silence, me repeating my own mantras. But
mm,
I just wonder like what kind of experience it would be to just sort of have that process for yourself. So fun, so cool.
mm. So cool. And it's taken me a while to kind of get to this place because when I first started teaching meditation, I did have scripts that I went off, but I guess that was coming from a place of not feeling so confident or experienced in doing that. And as I've kind of experimented over the last 3 years, it's become a lot more natural. And I've noticed just how naturally it comes to me, which I think is part of the second line in my profile, the 2-5 is that natural. I think it's just one of those things that does kind of come naturally to me. And it actually reminded me of something that the trainer, when I did my meditation teacher training, he said something when we had to do like a practice in front of everyone, in front of the class. He said something like, "Oh, it seems like you've been doing this for ages, or you've been doing this for a long time." And so, yeah, it's just nice to kind of see your gifts like that and then to be able to use them. And I mean, it's nice to have found a use for myself that hopefully will help me reprogram some of those beliefs, because how it's all come about is that when I'm listening to other people doing like subconscious reprogramming recordings, I find it really hard to resonate with their voice. And so that's why I was like, well, what if I try doing it for myself? Because I do have that experience in guiding meditation. What if I was to guide my own subconscious through those beliefs that I'm wanting to reprogram?
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, I think it's such a gift that
That's
you can
me.
give that to yourself. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just said, so that's me.
That's Hannah and her gifts.
That's me. What about
uh,
you? How are you feeling?
yeah, I shared with you a little bit briefly before we started today how I just feel a little bit out of sorts. And then you reminded me that there's a full moon tomorrow. And I don't entirely know how it all makes sense, but I just know how it resonates, like for myself. There's a full moon tomorrow for us here, and like for me here in Florida in the US. And then it's Pisces season. And then, which is the end of the astrological calendar. And then on top of that, most recently, the last couple days, I've been going through my own menstrual cycle. And I've just had a really, like, I'm going to use your word, like a ride, like a wild ride this time around. And I don't know if it's just like the combination of all of these energies right now in the atmosphere, because I've been like so irritable. I feel as if things from my past are like literally just popping me in the head every 5 seconds.
Mm.
And yeah, just been like sort of really emotional. But, I will say that what I've been practicing for myself is speaking out loud more, and speaking out loud more with a sense of confidence and like assurance, like being sure.
Mm.
And it sort of worked today. Like the day didn't necessarily start as like I wanted it to by any means. I also feel like I'm recognizing that there are just certain ways I might be pushing my physical body more than I need to. And I was taking a shower and I was just like, kind of like saying affirmations. Essentially, I was
Mhm.
setting a whole intention in the shower to just be released and cleansed and cleared of anything that does not serve my highest self right now. And when I get out of the shower, I will be afresh and new for the rest of the day. And quite honestly, since the shower, I have felt so much lighter.
Mm. I love that. I wonder if in a way it's like, because for both of us, it is like an affirmation.
Mhm.
Um, and I wonder if it's like us using our informing to the universe. Like, I'm informing you that this is how I want to feel. This is what I want to let go of. This is what I want to shed. And what also came to me is that you mentioned you've had your cycle, and I mean, that's a shedding. And then also the
Yeah.
full moon is a shedding. So, and I've been feeling that too. I mean, my cycle hasn't synced up with the full moon this time around, but I definitely feel like all these emotions that have been coming up for me are asking to be shed. It's like old things that are wanting to be
Yes.
released. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I just, I feel you. I feel the same.
Mm.
And
And I
sometimes,
want to
oh no,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I want to be clear that when I say like I created these affirmations for myself, they're not like what a lot of people would think affirmations are. I think this is something that's been coming up for me a bit lately, is that I think these language and I think some of these tools have been misconstrued over the years. And in a way, even like meditation, I feel like meditation has so many different misconceptions and stereotypes around it. And it really does kind of take away from what I feel like it is. And the same with affirmations, is that a lot of people think when you're saying affirmations, it's like, I am light, I am love, I am, it's very like woo woo or spiritual bypass in a way. But excuse me, for me, these affirmations have been like, no, I am powerful and I deserve to. I'm just trying to think of one of them. Like, because I know who I am, I attract the right people and the right circumstances towards me. It's words like that that are like
Mhm.
affirming to me that I know who I am, that sort of thing. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there, that it's not
Yeah.
like I'm not trying to make these fluffy affirmations or judge anyone who's into that kind of stuff. But this is really just like me using my voice to inform, to say to the universe, like, this is what I want. And I want to release anything, like you said, that's out of alignment with my highest good.
Yeah.
Fly. Now you go ahead. What were you going to say?
I lost it. I don't remember. It might come
I'm
back. It
sorry.
usually does. Um, but I don't know exactly how that segues into what I've been thinking about with um the last gene key of, so now we're on gene key 7. So Hannah and I have been exploring the gene keys. Each episode we kind of tie in, and somehow it does synchronize to some other concepts that we're discussing. And so when reading it, there's, first of all, the shadow here is division, and the gift is guidance, and the Siddhi is virtue. Yeah. So while reading it, there's this one particular part about how a lot of this energy has to do with like leadership, but leadership in the sense of serving. So leading from a place of service, not from a place of fear. And when I was reading it, it's interesting because it actually referenced how business owners, doctors, therapists, and I don't know, some other category of profession actually it can be seen as operating in a shadow frequency, because there's this like mentality that like that they sort of, I forget the wording that he used, but in your suffering, I'm gaining, is the way I'm taking it. Like if something's going on with you, then it's serving me, because ultimately like that profession is getting paid or getting some sort of return or whatever. And I was kind of like stricken back, because any of you who don't know, I practice psychotherapy for a profession, and I had to sit with it and, you know, kind of honestly notice how this could come up for me. Yeah, I mean, on some end, it is how I earned a living. Do I want you to stay in your suffering? No, absolutely not. And I think that's why I go back to, I'm in one of my introductions of myself somewhere, I say how, you know, ultimately my goal in working with other people is to help them have a space to find their inherent strengths, whatever they have within them that will get them through any of life's challenges. And so why I would want to relate this to what you were saying about the affirmations is because in reading this energy, I was thinking about our conversations of social media. And I was thinking about like they talked about how some of the world's greatest leaders actually don't get voted in. And the ones I started thinking about were like, and I don't know my history, so please forgive me, but the first person who came to mind was Nelson Mandela. And then the next person that came to mind, and this is just because I had watched the documentary on the documentary. I always kind of don't know which way that word's going to come out. On Netflix, called Mission Joy, with the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Tutu, maybe. Forgive me, I might be mixing it up. But both of these people also were ones who, like, they weren't, from my recollection, like they weren't people who were voted into these positions of guiding people. And that's what they essentially do. They are wonderful leaders of guidance. And they and so I'm thinking about these people, and I'm thinking about our conversations about social media and how it sort of feels as if there's just something off. And please, you're going to have to help me with the words now at this point, because I'm sort of going in a little bit of a circle here. But there was something about just the ones who are in leadership roles, and how I'm witnessing and have witnessed and have experienced leadership out of either a place of division, which it talks a lot about when it comes to like politics and stuff, but also when it comes to those who are here to, or feel that they're here to help others or serve others.
Yeah, so I don't know whether you can give a bit more of a specific example of what you're seeing on social media, because sorry, my voice is a bit croaky today, but for me, it made me think of like the coaching industry and how, and among other things, but I was thinking of it less I was reading it less around politics because I'm not so into politics, but more around like how I'm seeing people, and maybe this is what you're alluding to, is like in a role of influence or leadership in an energetic way, and then through social media where they're using their voice. And I mean, to go back to what you were saying about this shadow dynamic of the leader actually leading out of fear because they need people to follow them and need people to kind of perpetuate this victim mentality in order for them to gain something, which is, I don't know, a sense of their own worthiness or validation or money or whatever it may be. But it made me think of how, I mean, the coaching industry has just taken off over the last few years on social media. In particular, I see this because this is how people are marketing themselves. And actually, the 31st gate or the 31st gene key is the makes up the channel, the 73031, and the 31st is all about influence. And I was reading through the human design book about this as well, because I was just curious to get another kind of perspective on this energy. And it talks about marketing. And I think actually Richard Rudd talks about marketing in the 7th as well. Mm-hmm. Or I may have flipped over to the other chapter just to kind of get that broader perspective. But yeah, the coaching industry has just gone absolutely wild over the last few years. And I actually had someone reach out to me because I've done a bit of coaching over the years, and she had listened to one of my podcast episodes, my other podcast, and she said, "Oh, I'm looking to maybe find a coach. What's your advice?" Or like, who could I, do you have any advice on how to find the right coach? And it took me a while to respond to her because I really do feel like it's such a personal experience. And I really wanted to kind of convey, I don't know why I felt like the need and the pressure to convey to this one person, but I was just like, make sure you find someone who feels aligned to you and aligned to your values, because I have worked with other people before. I've worked with coaches who don't align with my values, and I signed up to work with them from a place of fear, hoping that this person would save me or fix me or solve all my problems. And I can see how they also, the dynamic was from a place of fear, them wanting to make money, them wanting to validate themselves, or I don't know what's going on in other people's minds. But I've had positive and negative experiences with coaching, and I just feel like, I don't know, I'm really interested to see how things change as we move into the new paradigm, because I think a lot of people who are out of integrity and who are giving advice and leading from a place of fear, even if they're not conscious of that, even if it's like a subconscious fear, I think that stuff is going to have to fall away.
Yeah.
What do you think? And is that what you were kind of alluding to?
Yeah, that is exactly what I was expressing. It's sort of, I've had conversations around this and with you and some colleagues around the fact that the coaching industry, whether you want to call it the self-help, the coaching, the healing, whatever word you want to add on it, has sort of really, it's like Instagram. I don't know about the other social media platforms, but it almost seems like, for me, the way I see it is like Instagram has now become like the Instagram therapy, and everything is sort of around some sort of information of how to work on this, or how to look at this, and how to, use this wellness thing, or help your body or biohack this way, or this and that. And it's just unfortunate sometimes to see, because I don't feel like it always has the context. So we have these quick, like this is how it connects a little bit, is like, let's have an affirmation of like, I am loved.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, but where's the context in that? And I think that's why, even in a lot of clients that I've worked with, if we've ever talked about affirmations, I've heard a lot of people say they don't work. Like, to go to an affirmation of I am loved, or
Yeah.
just start saying that to yourself without any actual, like, true guidance or support, it kind of just, I feel like it throws people off, and before they know it, like, they're just trying everything and anything without really like reading themselves first, or having like some groundedness in whatever information they're taking in when it comes to things around how to lead yourself, essentially, or guidance. um and it kind of like, I don't know which way to go sometimes, because I can see how it's like very helpful. All the self-help has been helpful in my own life. And I just wonder if now at some point, with the amount of it, it's more so going into a realm of, let me put out all this information to gain this attention, rather than give you the context to understand how to apply this in your own life.
I think the problem is that it's homogenized. When it's in a space like Instagram, it's not personalized to the individual. And this is what human design shows us, is that we are all so uniquely different. We all have similarities. We all go through similar things. We all experience similar emotions and human experiences, but we are so different, and we are here to be different. And when you're tailoring it, when you're giving out advice and it's not tailored to the individual, it's just, I don't know, some kind of vague affirmation, then it's not actually helpful. And the reason why I've heard that affirmations don't actually work for a lot of people is because the subconscious mind is so clever that if it doesn't believe it, then it's not going to take it on board. So if you're saying an affirmation but your subconscious mind doesn't think that it, or believe that it's true, then it's actually not going to do anything. And this is why I don't even want to use the word affirmation, even though that's like I guess the closest thing that I can kind of describe of what I had that urge to create yesterday. And by the sounds of it, you did too, in your own way, in the shower, is that like language is so limiting, because it's not what people think of affirmations to be. This is like a very personal experience that, based on my understanding or my knowledge of like what kind of subconscious beliefs are holding me back, because I've done some of the deeper work of excavating those things and observing my emotions and observing what's happening, then I'm able to create something that actually I believe will make an impact on my belief system. But yeah, like so much of the information out there on social media is just not helpful for most people. And I think this is where, I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot in terms of like my own business and the work that I do, is like, how can I create things or create a space in which people can explore these things for themselves? So, and then that really is kind of being the guide, rather than the leader who's telling someone how to do it and telling someone that like, this is the solution, this is what's going to fix all your problems, this is how you should do it, and there's one way to do it. I've always, ever since I started teaching meditation, I've always felt like I want to give people options, and I want to say, this might be helpful. You might like to try this. You might experience this. You may feel like this, because I know that no one person is the same. Every single experience is going to be different. We can't be giving out all this misguided information without that understanding and that context that we're all so uniquely different, and we're all on our own journey. And like you say, like it's not saying that self-help is not a useful tool, like books or resources or coaches. It's how are you using it, and who, I think, as well, and the integrity behind that person, how they're delivering that information. And I think I feel a huge responsibility, even just running a meditation for 5 people. I feel a huge responsibility to give advice, or not even advice, just like guidance in a really integrated way. Yeah. What does that bring up for you? What do you think?
I absolutely agree. And, I guess also for myself, recognizing exactly how do I want to show up when it comes to being of service. And it's interesting because as you were sharing, I was smiling, because I too find myself using similar language, staying away from like absolutes.
Yes.
And I noticed that about you just now. It's like, oh, like here Hannah and I speak the same language yet again, because I've oftentimes have expressed things with a fluidity of, yeah, like this may work, or I don't know, you might have to experiment with it. It may be for you, it may not be for you. And I think that's ultimately what it brings me back to, is great leaders are those who empower others. And I even had like underlined this one part. It says, the mark of a true leader is one whose main interest is in empowering you to lead yourself rather than binding you to them. Ironically, the false leader always tries to hold on to you, whereas the real leader always tries to get rid of you.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I highlighted the exact same line. And I love that. Like I see that in people who inspire me. Sorry, my cat's playing with a toy in the background, if you can hear that. I see that in people who really inspire me, is that then they don't want you to hang around forever and want to work with them and keep paying them forever. They want to empower you to go off and heal and be yourself, and then you go off and inspire others from there. So it's like this beautiful cycle of someone's just at a different part of their journey, and so they're then sharing their wisdom and what they know and what they've studied and learned and what gifts come naturally to them, and they're passing that on to someone else through like an energy exchange, I suppose, when you're working with someone as a leader or as a guide or as a mentor or coach. And then that person then gets to learn and work out how that information applies to them, and then they get to move on in their journey and pass that on to someone else. And I really feel like that's what the natural cycle, what we should be kind of wanting things to look like when it comes to things like coaching. But unfortunately, again, language just doesn't really serve us in this way, because everyone's a coach these days.
Well,
everyone's labeling themselves as a coach, and then it loses its true meaning. Go ahead.
Well, and think about it, because even in the word coach, you don't have, for me personally, you don't have the understanding of guide. And I even had a conversation with one of, with like a mentor of mine, where I was contemplating sort of therapist versus life coach roles. And she was like, well, Rafa, I just don't really know if life coach would even be serving you, because you are so much of a person that guides. And whereas a life coach is really someone, this was her understanding of it. She was reflecting it to me, gives people step by step on like what they should or could do next to ultimately reach a goal. So I think that that's where there's just a little bit of confusion as to, you know, who are the people out there that really embody this guiding and this sort of leadership quality, ultimately for society and humanity as a whole, to get us into, you know, other states of being. But they're not really, I don't know if the coaching industry, and I don't know, I haven't actually ever worked with a coach, mental health coach, right? You know, we're not talking about a sports coach here, because I think about them too, and even them, they're more so like they're teaching, right? Like, this, you want to get here, you got to do this, this, and this. And so, you know, with coaching, I just don't know if they carry a lot of these qualities. I'm not saying none of them do, where a lot of it is around putting the person first and truly listening at what their needs are. And that's also what was talked about in the 7th Gene Key, with the 13th being its programming partner, which is the gate of the listener.
Yeah, and which you have.
I have the gate of the listener. And I've been saying this really interesting thing lately, the last couple of weeks. I'm like, I could just listen to people's stories like all the time. And I mean, essentially I do, but I have actually found, and, you know, Richard Rudd even talks about it, I have found that sometimes some of my greatest sessions are where I am just holding space and listening. I don't even, I say a handful of things, and the person themselves comes to this insight or this revelation or this aha moment or just this clarity. And that's what I kind of like been thinking about. And I don't know if this is like segueing a little bit off, but I've just been thinking about, again, in relation to what we're talking about, if rather than just obtaining more information, maybe we just need people to listen to us. Maybe we don't need like the best new technique on something, or to know what, you know, I don't know. I know I'm probably like coming off as a little bit judgmental off of like what's out there on Instagram, but I just feel like, all right, can we just sort of like have space to process it all and to find out what's really true for you, and give ourselves the room ultimately, right? Because I'm only can talk about and reference myself. And I hope that other people do this too, because I just notice it for myself when I'm constantly obtaining information, like it's so overstimulating to my system that I can't really make sense of anything that's going on. And I wonder if that's partly why the last couple of days or last week, I have felt so many things flood to the surface, because I actually have taken like a little Instagram break. I don't know, just coming to me. But yeah, can we just have more places where we're just listening? Which Instagram isn't a place where you're just going to listen. Like, I get that. It's probably not the platform for that. But for anybody listening who this kind of resonates with, I would really say, like, take some time to see if what you need is to be held a little bit more intimately, rather than being, you know, just pushed with more affirmations or to-dos or techniques, or, you know, I don't know. I'm probably hating a little bit on Instagram and everybody who's like, and I found myself trying to do the same thing.
I think
like
this is good. I think we need to talk about this, and I don't think we need to try and filter ourselves or, justify what we're saying here. I mean, what you just shared brought up a few things for me. So I'd like to kind of share my
please
perspective.
go.
First of all, you talked about holding space. And I think that that's one of the greatest things that a true leader or guide or coach, again, it's almost like we need to come up with a new term. We need new terms for these things because they've kind of lost their meaning along the way. But a really, I think, true leader is, or guide, let's say someone who you're working with, will hold space for you, or a therapist, or someone who you're working with one-on-one or in whatever setting it is, has the ability to hold space and not try and project what they think they know onto the other person, but allow that person space to be heard and to express themselves. But then also, this is something that we can find for ourselves in a practice like meditation as well, is to hold space for ourselves and our thoughts and our emotions and whatever's coming up. And it made me think of as well, like, you said, it's not about finding more or getting more information and reading more self-help books. It's like tapping into what we inherently know within us, like our intuition, our own inner guidance system. And maybe things like Instagram are disconnecting us from that in a way, because we're overloaded with information and advice and tools. And it's not to say that those things aren't helpful and that they don't have a place and that they shouldn't be shared, because I've been grappling with this a lot lately. I've expressed to you quite a few times my frustration with social media and the online space, is that it's not that it's bad. Like, isn't it a beautiful thing that we can go online and we can find other people? I mean, I wouldn't have met you if it weren't for
Right.
Instagram in some way, or if it weren't for social media, because I discovered human design through social media, which then led me to discover Nikki, our teacher, and then that led me to meet you. So, like, these things aren't a bad thing. And in fact, I think I wrote down somewhere when I was journaling the other day that it's like, well, what if social media is neither good nor bad, but it's the way in which we're using it and the intention behind how we consume that information, but then also the integrity behind the people sharing the information. Like, what if the platform in itself is not a bad thing? It's just neutral. It just is. But it's the consciousness behind it that really informs our experience.
Yeah. And so it kind of, I think, well, one, I'll just say, I think you just expressed that so beautifully. It's to a point where it kind of has me, like, I sort of feel this ability to relate to it differently. And that it's funny because last night I actually started watching the Chris Rock stand-up on Netflix, his newest one.
Oh, I haven't
And
seen it.
I didn't get all the way through it, but this is essentially what the beginning he's sort of talking about is like, we have an addiction to attention. And he talked a little bit in there about like likes, and we're all just going for likes. And I feel like this is exactly what you're talking about, is like the consciousness behind some of these platforms, and maybe Instagram for one, is that it's running off of who can achieve the most amount of attention. And essentially, in some way, if you're trying to lead or coach or guide or influence on that in there, and you don't have yourself sort of like, okay, what's my intention with what I'm sharing? And like, what's the energy that I'm putting behind it? then you can get sort of swept up in this, like, I need this to reach so many views or so many likes so that, I don't know, I can, however the person may feel about themselves. I don't know.
Totally. Did you have more you wanted to share?
No, I think that was it.
Yeah, I identify with that so much. Like I really have been completely swept up in that game of attention.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't think this is where we need to let go of judgment, because I never set out to become obsessed, or I actually never set out to become a content creator, right? Which is what so many people I know, there is a little bit of a difference between someone who's putting information out as a life coach, as a leader or guide or whatever they do for their work, and and using it as a business tool, and those who are wanting to create content as, say, like an influencer or someone who is a creative and wants to share, which is what I would probably more identify myself as, someone who likes to share my creativity and express myself. And that format feels like a really natural way for me to want to do that. But I've just lost my train of thought. I'm just going to try and find it. Yeah, I never set out to be a content creator, but that was something that became an actual job as I was on my journey of creating. That's all I was doing, is creating and sharing. I was just using these platforms to share. So I was creating first and then using the platform to share. And if I'm going to relate it to, say, like a coach or something, you know, there were life coaches before there was Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were just writing books, or they were holding seminars or workshops in person, or it's just that the technology has changed and these platforms have become available over the years, and so people are then using the platforms as another way to kind of get their messages out there or to share their creations, which is what I was doing. Like I feel like I've kind of have a unique perspective on this, because I started out on Instagram basically when it started, and so I did grow an audience really quickly, because I was one of the only people sharing nail art designs at the time on Instagram. It was very new. And I was doing it from such a pure place of creativity and self-expression. And I wasn't trying to get followers or likes. I mean, it was fun. It was really cool to see myself grow, see my audience growing, and to see the impact that my creativity was having on these people. But I never set out to do that, right? And so I think this is where it's become misconstrued, is that like careers have actually been created through social media. People can now be influencers and be paid a lot of money to create content. And the same goes with coaches. Like a lot of people who probably never would have ever considered doing life coaching or some sort of leadership in that way are now becoming coaches, because it's an option, because platforms like Instagram and TikTok and YouTube have become a way that people have seen that they can create a career for themselves. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing. Again, like, isn't that beautiful that people can make money online doing things that they love? Like, I think that is a beautiful thing. But if the consciousness behind it is tainted by wanting to gain attention and to attract likes and to make money, if that is the intention, then that is what is, I think, misconstruing the yeah. Did that make sense? I feel like I've lost my train of thought at the end there, but
yeah, no, it totally did. And I wonder if I'm just speaking, very honestly. I wonder if sometimes this, if we're talking about this, like, energy frequency that is within the seventh gene key, and how it relates to myself is what it was sort of like picking up on. It's like, I wonder if like the way I'm expressing what I'm expressing right now actually comes from the repressed expression, which is referred
Hidden.
to as hidden. So in a
Yeah.
way, I feel like, if I'm just speaking honestly, that the way I still hold very true to some of my own opinions around these dynamics, and at the same time can also recognize that it comes off as a projection. Because when I'm reading it, and when I even sort of understood the repressive nature of this shadow of division being hidden, which is essentially like you're hiding,
Yeah.
you're
Not
hiding,
sharing your gifts. Yeah.
right? And I I can just really sort of see how, to some degree, that's where I may be coming from, because it's so beautiful to witness and to see your process with it. And like you were sharing with me a little bit earlier, like you have, if you're looking at a human design chart, you have the 31, which makes the 731 channel, which is the gate of influence. So you've just like embody this other aspect of this channel, right? And so I don't know what's the learning for you, I guess, with the 7th, not having the full gate. Because like we've talked about, where you're open is where your wisdom is, and where you're here to learn. And having all of this open for myself right now, there is a lot of learning here for myself. And I can see where this is probably something that I'm just really experiencing. I've experienced a lot, but I'm experiencing it a lot more recently, really trying to step more into owning how much of a guide, a
Yeah.
leader, a psychotherapist, whatever label you want to put on it, this role that I do carry, and not like being like, yeah, I do therapy, or, like, this is what I do. Or I'm even speaking very quietly, because sometimes like I'm like, yeah, I'm a therapist, and then you get a reaction or whatever. And I think I've hidden in a way. And so when I come onto the social media, right, knowing the things that I know, then, and having a defined ajna, which gives me some
Yeah.
certainty about my ability to conceptualize or understand, have opinions or ideas around, or the psychology of life, right? Then I kind of get like revved up inside of me,
Yeah.
because
You
I
are
get
here to
this,
share your ideas. Yeah.
yeah, and I get this little like part of me is like, you could do the same thing, but you're just sort of sitting back here. And then this other part of me is like, there's no context here. Where's the context? Like, people need more than just this, right? And yeah, just I can sort of see how this for myself is like a great teaching.
And your ajna is connected directly to the throat as well. So you are here to speak out those thoughts and ideas. That's my understanding from, with having that connection. And it might be interesting for you to go into that channel that you have between your ajna and your throat and look at the energies there. Like maybe that will contain some information in the way in which you can share some of your wisdom and conceptualization and ideas.
Yeah.
And this is what came to me when you were speaking, is that this is where I think human design is so helpful, because it can point us in a direction. It can kind of show us what our gifts are, so that we can then share those gifts in a much more really effective way, like the way in which they were designed to be shared. And it can help us to, and I don't think that I'm entirely integrated in this or embodied in this. I'm trying to learn that the way I'm here to express myself is through creativity and creative self-expression. And so it's not always for me to be sharing my ideas and thoughts, unless I'm perhaps in the company of someone like you who can help me to create that connection to my throat. But this idea of integrity keeps coming up for me, and I was thinking about it this week because in relation to integration, and this was something that we both kind of was one of our intentions, I believe, at the start of the year, was to more fully embody who we are and our gifts and what we're here to kind of share and contribute and how we're here to serve. And then also to be more integrated, to integrate the information that we've learned about ourselves and about our experiences in the world, in order to do that. And it kind of makes me think of like integrity being a part of integration. And so if people can kind of understand themselves more through human design or the gene keys or whatever tools or self-discovery methods, meditation, whatever it is that you want to use, I think that's where we can then show up on these platforms with a greater sense of integrity, because we know ourselves and we understand we're in a particular way and not do it out of fear, out of needing attention, out of wanting followers. I mean, isn't it just so funny that the language here that he uses is about leadership and followers, and then we're talking about social media, which glorifies having more and more followers?
Yeah.
Like, isn't that so funny that social media is something that we've been just like frustrated with and feeling resentful towards, and seeing the patterns that people are playing out and how people are showing up and sharing their voices and not doing it from a place of integrity sometimes. And yeah, I don't know, it just feels very fitting.
It does. And that's why when, when I read it, it so happened that I was reading it just after had starting to stand up. And then today, Travis was talking to me about, because this is sort of like when you asked earlier about an example, this is what came to mind. Was he shared with me this post he saw about someone's opinion around ashwagandha, and finding it, like them saying that it actually is almost, it's like actually numbing, and that it's like almost like using an antidepressant, like the chemical process that happens is almost the same. So it's like actually not good, especially for pregnant mothers or something like this. And I don't know, I wasn't reading it, he was just kind of sharing it with me. And this is where I had to take a step back, and I'm like, okay, again, here we are, where you're just sort of like, one, coming across a little bit shameful, in my opinion, and two, like, who knows, like, the validity, back to integrity, of the back information of all of this. I have no idea about it, about the validity of that information. And this is where, to tie in, comes my other sort of like observation around what's seen, is that it almost feels in some ways, the information that is shared by people who are in positions of coaching, leadership, trying to give guidance or whatever, is that and again, back to almost what you were telling me, like, I can't tailor everything to be for everybody so that you understand it. And I also do believe that somebody coming across this, and it's not their responsibility, it's the person's responsibility, and I understand that, can sort of be shaming, though, in the sense of like, not everybody is at that place. And this is where I just think there's just too much information, because what if for the person who is taking ashwagandha because they actually don't want an antidepressant, like, what if that's just their choice? And secondly, like, and this goes to like other things where it's like, don't do this or don't do that, or like, this is bad for you, this isn't good for you, and then it's like, how do you know? Like for that person, it's not well. And it just, because it's just like screaming to the masses, right? And this is your part of like everything being homogenized. And we're all on it. So this is sort of like my message to everybody out there, is to take a step back when you read something and ask yourself, is this for me? Is this what I want to be guided by? Because there are just some people who don't necessarily have all the skills and tools at that time to completely give up something that's been part of their routine. And I don't think it's anybody's right to try to like give these fear messages, essentially. And that was just that reminded me of my example of sort of how all of this, I see it often. And yeah.
It makes me think of the saying, is it with great power comes great responsibility? It's like, if you are in a position of influence, of leadership, and even if this is just through having a lot of followers on social media or through being seen as some kind of a guide or leader or expert, you do have a responsibility to share with integrity, to the best of your ability. But then also, I think knowing that who you're sharing to may be in a vulnerable position, may not know as much as you do about certain things. I mean, no one is perfect. Like no one can ever do anything perfectly. So we have to kind of, I think if we are trying to be too perfect and tailor things too much, or to try and overly think everything through, then it kind of loses its message as well. I mean, we're all just human. We're all just human. And I'd like to think that everyone's just doing their best with the information that they have. But I do feel like if you are in a position of some sort of influence or leadership, that you do have a responsibility with that power, and how that influences other people. And then I think as individuals, we have a responsibility to discern what is for us and what isn't. And I think that this is where things like human design can really support us in doing that, because it can, I mean, for me, I've just started seeing information about, say, digestion, or information about, I don't even know what's a good example to give, but I can now see things. If I see a video come up on TikTok or Instagram, I can know, okay, that's just not for me, because that just doesn't apply to me. That's not relevant for me. And I don't have to then take on responsibility for all the people who aren't able to see that for themselves. They're on their own journey. Like everyone is on their own journey, but it's up to us to kind of discern. And then it's up to us, the people who do have a voice, the people who do have some sort of a platform, to, I think, take responsibility for our own intentions and the integrity behind our messages and what we share. And I think that that's really where we're moving towards with the new paradigm, from my understanding. Like, I don't know. I'm not a human design expert, but from what I've learned, I feel like that's kind of where we're moving towards. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I appreciate you bringing up just that we're all doing our best. It's kind of something that I've actually been repeating to myself often lately. And, you know, the other part that I was going to say is that, like, yeah, for myself, what I do know is that I have 7 out of the 9 centers open. I only have 3 defined centers. So this is also where a lot of this, maybe I come across pretty like aggressive about it, is because with having so much openness, I can get easily caught up in the messages and what's out there, because it's just open to conditioning. right? And then I can feel where I get sort of like overthinking or off-centered or whatever it may be. And so through human design and learning that about, my genetic makeup and constitution, is that, okay, I actually don't really need to be on Instagram that much, or taking in really that much information all the time, because it's just sometimes it's not needed. Sometimes I have enough with what's around me and what's right in front of me that if I'm not careful, I'll just sort of start giving my body more than it needs.
Yeah, I feel you. And I too have a lot of openness. I've got, particularly from like my G center and my heart are defined, but then below that, everything is open. Is it the same for you? Like spleen, open sacral, open emotional solar plexus, and open root. I have all of those open.
I have those plus the identity and the head center.
Yeah.
But to that point you just made, like, if I'm remembering correctly, your emotional center, your sacral, and your spleen are all completely open.
Completely open. No gates, nothing coming out of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and I still have a lot to learn, and I feel like I'm doing it through this journey of exploring these energies with you. I feel like it is such a deep dive into learning about all of these energies, and that's probably where we can then discern what's for us and what's not, or what's for us to learn and what's for us to share. Maybe that's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah.
Like through understanding our openness and understanding our definition, we can get a greater understanding of what's for us to learn from others and what's for us to share with others. And that's where we can perhaps show up with a bit more integration, from a more integrated place with more integrity. And I mean, yeah, there was more. There was something else there, but it's gone. Yeah.
Well, I'll bring it full circle for us, because in the beginning, or before we started, you had asked me, what season do I thrive in? And my answer to you was like, I actually don't really know. And right now I feel like this practice of embodying and experimenting with human design and just with awareness itself, I'm just like so curious to find out, to see, what season of the year do I really, what season of the year do I truly thrive in? Because I don't really know. I mean, I've lived in sunny Florida practically my whole life. And something that I've learned through astrocartography actually is that for me, I'm very close to my moon line. And I don't know exactly what the moon line means. I can imagine that it has a lot to do with your emotions. Maybe the moon, your emotion, maybe, I think.
I don't know.
And it would make sense. It would really make sense. If anybody has insights on this and would like to let me know what that could mean, I'm all ears. And it's also just another reason as to why I'm like pretty eager and ready to experience something else. So, yeah. Well,
and you'll be guided there in the right time, I'm sure.
Wherever I have no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved this conversation today. This was so much fun.
It really was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, this is what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. I love it. It's so important. I think it's, yeah. Oh, I remembered. I wanted to say before, I think You said something like it sometimes can come across as aggressive because of your openness. And I don't know, it doesn't come across that way to me per se, but I wonder if it's also just part of our manifestor energy, like a little bit of this anger when we see things that are not perhaps working in the way that we think that they could be working. And I don't know, maybe this is just a question to ponder, but I do feel like in a way we are here to kind of be, I mean, energetic leaders. We're the ones who start things. We're the ones who get things going and initiate. And the way we do that is through our voice and through informing. And so I don't need to have the answer to that question, but I just wanted to kind of mention it, is like perhaps this is why we feel drawn to talking about these things and finding a new way to relate to these tools and to relate to, because there's so much about sharing and communication and influence and leadership. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, same. It's fun to talk to you.
Yeah.
And explore these different things. So, yeah, well, thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure. If you have anything that you want maybe Hannah and I to talk about and share back and forth, let us know. Totally open to anything you want to hear.
All right. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Bye.